Assalamu alaikum. For the past 2 or 3 weeks, I have been opening and explaining to you Assalamu alaikum. And once again, I'm going to just repeat what I've said in the past. Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who we believe was the last prophet to humanity, to the whole of humanity, he asked his companions, Allah has given us something that if we use it, it makes peace between us. What is it? The companion said, Allah and His Prophet know best. He said to say, Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Allah says in His book, the Holy Quran, that if someone greets you, you return the greeting with its equivalent or better. But there's no specification that the person that you give this to has to be a Muslim. So I open with Assalamu alaikum. This is a program, Islam Works. And I'm your host, Abdullah Muslim. I open in the name of Allah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, As-salatu was-salam, ala nabiyyina Muhammad, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. And the basic theme of the program is, how do you use Islam? Now I'm going to place emphasis on the word use, not the word practice. And the reason is because when you practice something, at least in my mind, from what I know about practice, when I was in high school or junior high school, we'd practice running, we'd practice lifting weights, we'd practice swimming. Yeah, I went to a high school with a swimming pool. And what would happen is, when you finish practicing, then you go back to your normal routine. We see for Muslims, Islam is the normal routine. We're not practicing it, we're using it. So, having said that, we have our brother Mutabil. And for those of you who don't know, he used to be one of the artists,
yes,
with Tupac Shakur. And his life, his story is very interesting. Unfortunately, we only have 20 minutes. And with the opening, we have maybe 18 minutes. But still, we're going to try to get as much of his story in. And, well, go ahead, brother. Explain to us how Islam has improved your life.
First of all, alaikum salam, back to you. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. How Islam improved my life. You know, first, most might not know that my mother and father were Muslim. Okay. You know, they passed away when I was 3 years old. Then I was raised by my Christian grandparents. Mm-hmm. So I grew up, you know, at my younger days, my earlier life, I grew up in and out of church. My early teenage life and years, I became a person that just said, I have no religion, I only believe in God. Mm. And with that, you know, the way that I was living my life in the music industry, it come with certain vices. You know, you drink and you party and you live a certain lifestyle as a rap artist. So I realized that as a rap artist, my life was just going out of control. You know, I had no limits to drinking or partying. I was able to do whatever I want.
What made you realize that? I mean, you were surrounded by people that were doing the same thing.
Yes, yes.
So what made you realize that your life was going, you know, was something you didn't want it to be?
You know, I sat back and watched, you know, some of my friends. You know, I sat back and I said, well, this individual, he's in prison now for the rest of his life. Or this individual, he murdered someone, or someone murdered him. He took his life got cut short. Or this individual, you know, was drinking alcohol and he put himself in danger. And now he's doing prison. He waking up in his cell. So I start realizing that eventually that would be me. And then we lost people like Tupac. You know, I lost Tupac Shakur. We lost another member of the Outlaws, my group, Yafeo. So I started to think about life and death.
Lost him how?
where Tupac got murdered in Las Vegas. Gaddafi, who was a half brother of Tupac, he's also the one who introduced me to Tupac. He was murdered by my own little cousin, who I introduced them to each other, you know? So when I sat back, yes.
Where are you from?
Originally from Newark, New Jersey, Irvington, New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey.
Irvington, Newark.
Yes, yes.
Which are, I don't know about
Yes.
then, but I
Yes.
know now they're very rough places.
Yes, yes, yes. Even
Okay.
then, you know, growing up, that
Right.
it was a rough. We grew up in rough
For some reason, I
neighborhoods.
thought you were from New York, but okay.
Yeah,
but go
yeah.
ahead. I'm sorry to cut you off like that.
No problem. So I just realized that the way that I was living my life, I needed change, but I didn't know how to change, and I didn't know where I can find this change. You know, I used to say to myself, I would never be a Muslim, because the people that murdered my parents was from the Nation of Islam. And growing up, my grandparents and my uncles, they didn't know the difference between the Nation of Islam and the religion of Islam. So my grandmother, she used to always say in the home, Muslims killed your parents. So, you know, you hear this growing up, you would say, then I would never be a Muslim, you know? And I live my life just saying I believe in God. Yes.
The reason I say that is because I came through the Nation of Islam, okay?
Yes.
And the only reason I even went into the Nation of Islam,
Yes.
because I was looking, you know, I came from somewhat of a privileged life,
Alhamdulillah.
okay? Because,
Yes,
you know, my
yes.
dad was in the military.
Yes,
And
yes,
we lived well,
MashaAllah.
okay?
Where you from? if you
New
don't-
York.
New York,
Yeah,
yes.
New York originally. I was, you know, I was
Mashallah.
born in Harlem Hospital. And,
yes, yes.
you know, we lived there while my dad was in Korea, and then we moved up to the Bronx, and then we moved to Queens, and so
yes.
forth and so on. you know.
Yes.
And what happened was, while I was growing,
Yes.
even though I'm just going to go this quickly because this is your story, but I'm just trying to
Yes.
dovetail with what you were
Yes,
saying.
yes, yes.
I accumulated some bad habits, drinking alcohol, and you know, going with this one and that one and the other, and so forth and so on. Then I
Yes.
joined the military, okay, and my
Yes.
habits were amplified, okay. And
Yeah.
what happened was when I got out, I knew I wanted to get married. I got out when I was 21 years old. I was a Sergeant E5. And
Yes.
my dad, who had been in the Army for 26 years, he says, well, why don't you stay? I said, because there's something better. Didn't know what it was,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
knew that there was something
Yeah.
better.
Yes.
So what happened was I had, you know, I had accumulated, not accumulated, like I said,
Yes.
my bad habits were amplified. I was
Yes,
gambling,
yes,
I was
yes.
drinking.
Yeah.
And I got married after the year after I was discharged.
MashaAllah. Wow.
Okay.
Yes.
And I married my best friend's cousin.
Mm.
You know, had I been in another society, maybe it would have been
Yeah.
different. But you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So at any rate, what happened was after marrying her, I wanted to get myself sorted out. And you know, every time I see one of my old buddies or one of my old friends, come on, have a drink, have
Yeah.
a cigarette, you know, the whole bit, and I wanted to get away from it.
Yeah.
So the only people I know that weren't doing that were people in the Nation of Islam. And that was my
Yes.
primary reason for, you know, for joining that particular
Yes,
group
yes.
of people. But go ahead,
Wow.
I'm sorry to take this time.
No, it's similar to, I guess, even probably what the reason my parents joined the nation, because my mother and father went through the nation. And then when Malcolm X left them, went to Hajj and Mecca, they became followers of Malcolm X, so they tried their best to their ability to practice Orthodox Islam.
Okay.
You know, but I just grew up hearing Muslims killed your mother and father, so I wanted nothing to do with Islam. And at that particular,
everything is the same.
yeah, I said everything is the
Islam
same.
dumb.
Yeah, yes. And
There is no
Christianity,
such
growing
thing.
through the church, I realized that that's not for me. So I said, you know, I just believe in God. And it just came a time where one day, intoxicated, you know, I was in the studio with my little brother and the Outlaws, the rest of the group members. Tupac passed away at this particular time. Gaddafi passed away. And I happened to get into a fight with my little brother. And he had to go to the hospital to get staples in his head.
Same parents.
Same mother, father. And I actually brought him to LA to protect him. You know, but when you drinking, you know, I wasn't in the right
You're not in
mind.
your
So
right mind, yeah.
he said something back to me. Instantly, we started fighting, and there was a Muslim in the studio that day. You know, he's an African American Muslim brother. He came up to me. He was like, "What's your name?" And I said, "Mutar." And then he said, "That sounds like a Muslim name or whatever." And then we just started talking. He was like, "You know, who was the guy you fighting?" I was like, "That's my little brother." He's like, "Do you know, like, you know, the blood that you shed, you pretty much shed as if you shed the same blood of your mother and your father." You know, he started reasoning with me. And he was the first person that, you know, came to me and spoke to me in this calm manner, you know. Then eventually we exchanged numbers, and he would call me every day to come to the masjid. And, you know, growing up, hearing that Muslims killed your parents, you don't trust Muslims. But I said, this guy seemed a little different. And I went to the mosque, and kid you not, I brought at least 30, 50 friends with me. I remember I went in there with a gun because I'm thinking these people must be violent people. So the masjid was in South Central LA.
So you were strapped.
I was strapped, bro. I didn't know what to expect, So when I went in the masjid, I seen like it was a majority African American masjid, but I seen, people from Pakistan was in there, some Arab brothers in there, white Americans was in there, but everybody was getting along. I haven't seen this, coming from the music industry. So I'm sitting back and I'm wondering, how's all these people from these different ethnicities just treating each other like brothers, And eventually I left the mosque and I told him, I said, give me literature of your religion. Even though I heard about Islam.
So you knew nothing about Islam? Even
I only knew my mother and father was Muslim, but I said, how can I follow? They killed my parents. So I was like, I know what Islam is. I had a few uncles that accepted Islam, but they never gave me dawah. They never sat us down. The only thing they taught us is not to eat pork. This is the only thing you should stress to us. Don't eat pork. Your mother and father didn't want you to. So when he gave me the literature, at this time in my life, I was very depressed. I was unhappy. So it got to a point where I felt like I achieved everything I can as a musician. We appeared together even to this day. I would say 40 million records sales worldwide. And then at that time, I had 3 houses, one in a gated community, another townhouse, and cars and money, but I was the most depressed person. So I was thinking, how come I have this, the money, the houses, the cars, but every night I got to literally drink myself to sleep, So I was searching, and that's when the incident happened with my brother. And then when he gave me the literature of Islam, I went to my house and I started reading it. And I remember the names my grandmother used to teach me. My grandmother was a Christian woman. And I hear the names of Isaac and Jacob, Abraham, Solomon. I'm like, wait a minute, my grandmother used to teach me about these prophets. And then when it got to the Prophet Muhammad and his companions, I realized that the reason why I'm depressed, the reason why I'm unhappy is because I'm living my life in contradiction to Islam. And I realized that I need to be a Muslim. Not too long after that, I called the brothers, like, I want to become Muslim. A couple of days later, I kept reading. It was clear to me, also as a rap artist, as a, artist, we consider ourselves poets. And, Tupac, they would say he was a genius when it comes to writing, So when I was reading the Quran, even though it was English, I knew, like, these cannot be the words of a man. There's no way a man would even think like this, you know what I mean? So I was just intrigued by it. Yes.
So then what happened after you accepted Islam? What kind of changes? I mean, you had to get rid of the gun. At least register.
I registered. I got the registered gun.
Okay. Okay.
But what happened, one of the first things that I did, honestly, because alcohol got me in trouble. I would get
everybody in trouble.
Everybody. And like you said, I would get drunk and I would get angry. And I would, every single time, something bad would follow. So I said to myself, I have to stop drinking. But, I went a period where I was alcoholic. And, I remember my brother told me, he used to always tell me.
Alcoholic or a binge drinker?
Alcoholic. And the reason why I say alcoholic is I was addicted. And I would go 5 years without drink. 5 years of my life, I drank every single day. I didn't miss one day without drinking hard liquor. Every day, to the point that I can tell when it's 5 o'clock, because I start at 5. I don't even have to look at my watch to know at 5. My body starts telling me it's time to get alcohol. So everybody around me, but I didn't carry myself like an alcoholic and falling out. I was just doing it. It got to the point that I was drinking because I needed it.
How old were you when you were doing all of this?
When we started drinking at 14, 15 years old.
Yeah, I had my first drink at 11.
Wow. I would even say I had my first drink probably at the same age, because I had pictures where, my father's African American, my mother's Puerto Rican. I had pictures of, as a youngster, like at my Puerto Rican grandmother's house, drinking some type of liquor, And I remember my cousins and them used to give us a sip of beer when I was a kid, and they laugh at it. And I mean, you know how this,
You make a man out of you.
Yeah, it makes a man out of you. And I think that's probably what led me to drinking,
Yeah, and then all the movies you see, every time the hero has a problem, he gets a drink, smokes a cigarette, everything is okay.
So this is what they push in mainstream Hollywood, that they make us believe that alcohol would, take care of our problems. So I realized I had to stop drinking, because I believe I came to the point where I was ignorant, though. I got to the verse where, Allah says, don't come to drinking, to prayer drunk. I didn't get to the verse, or I didn't pay attention or even understood that verse was abrogated when Allah said, leave it alone altogether. So I would drink and I would drink. And
So she didn't know about the abrogation.
I didn't know about the abrogation. So I have really no one around me that was knowledgeable. One friend of mine who we grew up in New Jersey, but he was a street dude. He was Muslim all of his life, but he was a drug dealer. He was a gangster. But at least he was keeping up with his prayers in Ramadan. He was my brother's best friend. And
this is in New Jersey.
They all moved to LA at this time with me. So my brother, some of my friends, they all moved to LA from New Jersey, and they was doing their thing out there in LA. So when I became Muslim,
I gotta say,
yes.
I've been a Muslim trying to practice Islam since 1969.
MashaAllah.
Okay.
Yes.
And I said practice, trying to use Islam since
Islam,
1969.
MashaAllah.
But I've never met a Muslim who was a thug.
MashaAllah.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately,
Yeah.
may Allah help us.
Ameen.
Unfortunately, may Allah help us because, like you have a lot of Muslims in New Jersey and Philadelphia killing each other. Hassan Somali, for example, he's an imam in Germantown, and he was telling me some of the situations that's happening that you have Muslims getting caught up with, street stuff. And when I grew up, Muslims wasn't thugs either. They was respectful. Like, for example, there's a video with Tupac back then when he first trying to become an actor. He turned away $100,000. Back then, $100,000 was a lot of money for a beginning actor, all because they wanted him to play a Muslim gang member. And he said he got into a fight with the producer because he said there's no such thing as a Muslim gang member. Now things change, and I don't know where it's from. Maybe because Islam is spreading. Sometime a person might accept Islam and they need some time to change, So they might be a street dude who a new shahada, and then take some time. Like when I first became Muslim, I was drinking, like I fast from Ramadan. When the sun go down, I would drink. Break my fast with my dates, drink my Hennessy. And this guy who was my brother's best friend, even though he was drinking and smoking, he came to me and said, what you doing is wrong. And I was like, man, you can't tell me you ain't Allah. This is what I used to say. You not Allah. Allah tells me in the Quran, don't eat and drink till the sun go down. And I'm doing that. But he knew that what I was doing was wrong.
Right.
Until eventually the next year I was able to fast, and alhamdulillah, from that day, the next year never had a drink. I was able to walk away from it by Allah's permission, of course. But it was difficult. It was difficult. It was
difficult, yeah. That lifestyle, that life change, it is difficult. Okay. And what happens is, like I said, the thing I was trying to get away from after I accepted Islam and started practicing Islam according to, was only one Islam.
MashaAllah.
Okay? And what happened was a lot of my old friends, whom I still know today, okay?
Yes.
I've known some of them since I was 8 years old. Some of them
MashaAllah.
I've known since I was born. We've born right around the same time.
Yeah, MashaAllah.
And what would happen is whenever I'd go to their house, they would always offer me a drink. And even after I accepted Islam, one time I went over one of my friend's houses, and he says to me, he pours out this big water glass full of rum. And he puts it in front of me and says, here, have this. I said, I don't drink anymore. He said, I was just testing you.
Wow.
I was just testing you. So, you don't know.
Yeah,
I can relate very much to what you're saying. And, leaving that alcohol for me was a big thing. All right, I wasn't alcoholic personally, but I did have, I was a binge drinker. That's why I made the distinction between the two.
Yes.
And what happened with me was I had an incident where I went to a house party and I drank, and I don't remember what happened. Fortunately, my wife was with me, so she was watching my back. And she was always a reserved person. She didn't drink. She didn't like smoking. And she was watching my back. She says, you didn't do anything.
But you didn't.
But I didn't like the idea of not knowing what happened, not remembering anything.
Yes.
So that's when I started leaving it alone. In fact, I went home. I threw all this stuff out.
Yeah, that's how.
Got rid of everything.
Yes, alhamdulillah.
And but leaving that alcohol was a big one for me.
It was for me too, man. It was a very difficult, you know what I mean? But when I did it, I realized, alhamdulillah, one of the best things after accepting Islam was trying to get rid of to stop drinking, you know what I mean? It just, because if I look back, majority of the problems that I got myself into was after I took a drink of that alcohol, I got myself in some problems.
Yeah. you know, the one of the things that, like I said, you know, in the society in which we come from, alcohol is glorified.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And
Yes.
you know, you have people like Steve McQueen. You know, I think he's before your time.
But he's a singer, huh?
No, he was an actor.
The beat
actor.
Oh, actor. Yeah.
He died
Sound familiar.
from. He used to like to race cars and do all kinds of stuff. His
Yeah.
movies were interesting. And he bought the best helmet, you know, at that time, and it was lined with asbestos. Okay, and he was inhaling the particles.
Wow.
Over a long period of time, and this is the illness, the ailment that you get from it.
Yes.
Right? There's no cure for it.
Yeah.
And this is what took him away. But every one of his movies, alcohol, sex, and drugs.
Yeah, this is the
Okay.
American life.
Yeah. And
Hollywood life now.
Yeah, Hollywood.
You know?
Yeah. You know, and you know these things reinforce negative stereotypes.
Yes.
And for me, the things that were placed in front of me was not only that, but also the glorification of murder.
Yes.
Okay. Because, you know, in a lot of the movies, they showed us how many movies have they made about John Dillinger?
Yeah.
How many movies have they made about Al Capone?
Yeah.
You know, and they you know, how many movies have they made about Bugsy Siegel? Bugsy.
Yeah, Bugsy Siegel.
Okay.
Yes.
And they call him Bugsy because he was crazy about killing people.
Wow.
Okay, that's why they call him Bugsy.
I didn't
He was a
even know
Jewish
that.
gangster.
Yeah. Wow.
And he started an organization called
Yeah.
Murder Incorporated. All right?
Wow.
Yeah, well, they, you know, depending on the level of the person you wanted killed, you had, this was what was glorified.
Yes.
And, you know, these types of things, once you become a Muslim and you start learning about Prophet Muhammad, you start learning about his companions, what we refer to as the Sahaba, and you start trying to bring their behavior into your life, you change.
You change.
You change radically. Radically meaning
because we have, for example, we have examples now of people we can look up to. You know,
you have successful role models.
Successful role
not
models.
just examples, because a lot of them were worse than we were.
SubhanAllah.
Okay.
Yeah, they did it. Allah guided them.
Yeah. And they didn't have guidance.
Yes.
You know? So at any rate, you know, that's why we say Islam works.
Islam works.
You know.
Alhamdulillah, it works, man. We say it over and over again.
Over and over again.
You know, over and over again. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, so see you all, inshallah, meaning if Allah is pleased with it, next time.